Chom den den jan de yong la sha za lo kong ge lo de de nye den nye dra nam da ra sra ve chi nye den gen chi jen ze ni je tu gra le wan zen kong da si be zun ra ma re mun tam jin nga je ze ve ro so kon la pu je tar yin lai zhu je yong de song zhu dra je zhu nyu mu nye lo le je jiao zhuan zhuan zi jian ne ma re men si re dong re nyu qin ye jian zi ra zhe nam de ne da jian sa ju tar si yin den lu zuo jia si tu yu gu wei chung zhai zhu dong ju ni jian da lu men sen zhan bei yong lai du Amara Bazana de Amara Bazana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana Amara Bazana de Amara Bazana de Ramzana 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 Amara Bazana de Amara Bazana de Ramzana 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 Amara Bazana de Amara Bazana de Ramzana Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana Amara Bazana de Amara Bazana de Ramzana 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 Amara Bazana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana de Ramzana Amara Bazana de Zedene Je Chenra Vezre Je Dalu de Mohamed Barab Sarane Kadon Denje Jonglu Tobaye Lu zhi pa bia nong wa sol tu sol to bia cha wa nam sa re shen sao dan jia jie gong ha wa gun du zong bia we si re da yi gun ne cho la yin gu sha cha ra Kong po nga she da la xin ju re jen da gen de she ngue la cha je pa so chen chen dara rong wa me pa ye ro la nin je re chur gon te la du she ye ka yin sab yin yong ba la lu zhe jen gu re je e si re jen je gu me je men be chong nam gen sar je wang jan be yong la du Serabukando Sije Tanyele Tamge Samu Chage Yon Zonjen Chonjo Nimbu Lamken Karma Ba Meje Debe Jiu Zuge Du Konda Shojo Dongge Jigdena Deje Lomora Churva Seje Je Tambe Chuje Dendre Chambe Je Sembarando Bodam Jendere Shi Lasso, tene Japsum Drove, Sem Dang, Jean Jip Chodos, Sem Jebe, Sem Number Ni, Jesu Tembe, Gone, Ta, Tambe Chusen Ronang.
So Khenpo Rinpoche asks everyone to begin by taking refuge and to generate bodhicitta. Recollecting these two practices prior to beginning listening to the explanations that are to be given.
Tataringan zo chudon de chuje dam chimbo yignane dangbotre tela tene nyame thapur mchege song launam tharjing gondon darchena shin ne jinjik den metapayim batang nang juji semjen yang metapayim betsul nik gone ten la pabnang yore.
Now the topic we continue with today is the first of the four seals of Buddhism, and as was explained yesterday, these four so-called seals, these 4 points, which set forth 4 perspectives of what one in general refer to as reality. The 4 sum up the entire Buddhist doctrine. Now, one of the texts that Khenpo Rinpoche bases his explanations on is the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, authored by the great Gampopa, one of the founding fathers of the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. And in his Jewel Ornament of Liberation, in terms of setting forth explanations about emptiness, Gampopa does so while focusing on 2 basic perspectives of reality, that of the outer world and that of the sentient beings who inhabit the world in question, explaining that both the outer world and the individuals who inhabit the world are impermanent.
Chirtang ten shunayang Pana Michike lecture chitege ayu Tep chitinange ayu Tina la Ngan nangba yin masenaya Chuji Danda damchimbo jam Tawa kata shakja yedang tembachi Yuena
Now, in general, regarding the so-called 4 seals set forth in Buddhism, as was mentioned in brief yesterday, they regard an individual's worldview, how the individual understands various perspectives of the world he lives in, as well as the sentient beings living in the world. Now, there may be those who understand what the 4 seals point to without being Buddhists. The 4 seals, these 4 points, can be understood even without formal training in the Buddhist faith, as it were, regarding them. There may be individuals who give lectures at various educational institutions and the like, where they set forth these 4 points without them having any specific connection with the Buddhist faith. So individuals can arrive at an understanding of these perspectives in the absence of formal training in Buddhism or formal education in Buddhism. One may also find in the writings of various authors that they have understood and grasped the 4 points that the 4 seals are about. And therefore, these individuals, even though they are not confessed Buddhists, as it were, they have not converted to the Buddhist faith, in meaning, as it were, they are, in that their worldview accords with the Buddhist worldview.
Tagana shinge nangba yinsene ta traba lama demena nangbeke nang yeba chige chöje damchimbu yeom tawa kata bisagje yetang man paje shegi yuenayandra man paje ti yuenayandra te tang man pege nyamne chen nang gi yuena te nang bege nang na rotwe khagure.
On the other hand, there may be individuals who have converted to the Buddhist faith or are born in a Buddhist country and therefore by tradition are members of the Buddhist faith, as it were, who, in terms of them giving lectures or in terms of them authoring an article or a book, where in terms of the lecture, what they say, and in terms of what they write about the article or the book, it becomes clear that their knowledge is not one which has embraced the four seals. Their knowledge is one which lacks understanding of the four seals. There may also be Buddhist practitioners, those who are members of monastic communities, those who are a lama, meaning they have some training in meditation and therefore some meditative skills that permit them to guide others to some extent in meditation practice. And there may be Buddhist practitioners at large who do not have this kind of knowledge, proper knowledge of the four seals, and therefore when engaging in efforts of, to some extent, guiding others in the Buddhist faith, they are not able to do so properly. And therefore it may also be the case that they, in terms of their efforts in meditation, perhaps they are not aware of this themselves, in their meditation practice there are flaws because of the lack of this knowledge, which makes their meditation not a Buddhist one, as it were. So knowledge of the four seals is imperative.
When a better shivina, Purge Cavachambure, Rendawa Junulo to Shukit. Conchuju Saturate, Purge Chuju Yakake, Cadu needing Lamacham on Shutubat. Conke Trumta Gina Nangba Mente Tado Chaluk then attach your two mothers. Got out
Tadan
Chaluk to
Ta said you?
Tasana Nangba Yimbegi Chögu and de la Tashi or
Oder Chödrak.
Yeah, chet. Today again and Nangba Yim, but Yiming touch your two mothers. tawa kata ki shakja yedang tuangi mendu dogdang mendu tuyne nangba yinbe ki takchwe de che kubure songre.
There is a great Tibetan Buddhist master of old, Renda Vashonu Lodro, of the Sakya school of Tibetan Buddhism. However, he is recognized as a great master by all 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism that we have today. Now, according to him, whether a person is a Buddhist or not cannot be determined on the basis of his outfit, for example. One can take the example of a member of a monastic community. One cannot, with 100% certainty, say that the individual who wears the outfit of monastic ordination is a proper Buddhist or not. So, outer signs of belonging to the Buddhist faith, on the basis of these signs, it's simply not possible to determine whether an individual is a true Buddhist or not. What determines whether an individual is a true Buddhist is whether or not the individual's worldview is based in the 4 seals, meaning the individual has a good knowledge, a comprehensive knowledge of these 4 points.
Penna kunjin bicho doji songre.
Lasso?
Tawa kanse chepa nangba yin la. Tawa nangba ma yin be mu yore songre.
Another great Tibetan Buddhist master of the past, the all-knowing Mikyo Dorje, the 8th Karmapa, said, if an individual of the Buddhist faith engages in a specific Buddhist conduct, that, or on the basis of that, it's not possible to determine whether the individual in question is a true Buddhist or not. It is, or the only proper criteria for determining whether a practitioner is a Buddhist or not is whether or not the individual has acquired a comprehensive knowledge of the 4 seals to the extent where his worldview is based in the teachings set forth as to the 4 seals.
Penna chepa nangba yin la sede chapsun drove lo yeba che. Daga na shingi megewa chupong ba la sokwe chepa sangbo yue de de chepa de nangba de tumbar ko nangba re. Yin na yang kata ki shakja yam chöji damji kemiling kinji na ko tawa ki chan nangba mare.
Now, there may be confessed Buddhists who have taken refuge in the 3 jewels and who adhere to that practice, as well as having given up engaging in any of the 10 non-virtuous actions. One can say that this individual is a Buddhist in terms of the perspective Buddhist conduct, the Buddhist faith and Buddhist conduct. However, if the person has not acquired a good knowledge of the four seals to the point where that makes for his worldview, then he lacks the Buddhist view as to the nature of the various perspectives of reality. So he's lacking the Buddhist viewpoint. Therefore, he isn't a full-fledged Buddhist, as it were.
Ti into ngaran so ranjin su yin na yang. Jewa ngama le zangbu sa pa le tane. Mi lu top. Sanje tamba namda chilin je du. 다른 오늘 남바친이 바지 나야데 하장 내장 개천부르.
Therefore, whether one looks at oneself or Buddhists at large, it's important to understand the following, namely that in this life, because of having practiced virtuous actions in the past, we have had the fortune to be reborn as human beings who have encountered a Buddha's doctrine. Tamangama dit senyi?
Nangba sinyi pa chigla, tacho nika nangba chiyimba godu.
Having gathered those good conditions, it's important to make good use of those good conditions, namely that one is a Buddhist, a true Buddhist, with respect to both Buddhist conduct and the Buddhist view.
Ti insa pena tawakata shakja yi. Te shepa samjig machowa. Ten rangi yula jarjute ta gogiyore. Pena jawakama pen ngolin chetwa sonyete yula yor songiyore.
So, with a good knowledge of the four seals, or when one speaks of a good knowledge of them, one isn't referring to an intellectual understanding of them, that one grasps what they are about intellectually. It's about, as His Holiness the Karmapa advised everyone when speaking of the four seals in one of his messages to the Buddhist community at the beginning of this pandemic. One is to integrate the teachings that make for the four seals to the point where one's worldview is one based in the four seals. So this is what he refers to, Khenpo Rinpoche explains, when he uses the word to accept. One accepts in the sense of embracing or integrating. Here, the four seals, the teachings which set forth the four seals.
Lasso, ta tarjin rang nang na ma shundu. Tene ta kazon ne jin jikten rakpa te tongpa ne chakpa ne nepa ne tarin jikpa yitsu de shu tsar che. Ta yang nepe ne kamdala. Tanda nga tsu nepe ne kabrwa.
Da chinwe gi jikten raba?
Dede.
No. Alltså nipa travamita pa.
Ya.
Oh,
Neben ngazo nechin be kam de la yang. Ngazo nesa ge saye ta re rawa khonchim la so.
Lasso?
Deso yang rem jin jun rog re song re. Rakwa chik chan samatan te ma tharu thar tung ku yot.
Yesterday, the course perspective of impermanence in the context of the outer world was explained a bit. There were also explanations as to the different phases of a world system. There was the mention of 4 periods: the period of a mere void, the period of the world system forming, developing, the period of its lifespan, as it were, and then the period of it disintegrating. Now, in terms of the outer world, the globe of Earth we live on is made up of a very large landmass, as well as a great deal of water bodies, oceans, lakes, rivers, and the like. And in terms of the landmass, there are different kinds of landscape. You have mountain ranges, you have flat areas, and so on and so forth. And human beings who live on this globe of Earth construct buildings, they construct their homes, and so on and so forth. Now, all these very obvious things, mountain ranges, rivers, buildings, and so on, are very obvious. They do not escape the attention of those who see these various features of the outer world, as it were. However, even though these features may seem very stable, seem to be of a lasting nature, that's a mistaken understanding of them. In fact, it is next pointed out in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, the subtle perspective of them, the landmass of the world, the rivers, the mountain ranges, the buildings, and so on, that have been constructed by human beings, are in fact not as fixed and static as they may seem to be. They are in fact in a process of constant change. And that brings us to the second perspective of impermanence with respect to the outer world, the subtle perspective.
Tiyang kandes jene jogindo sida tanda tandin dujek ngo potenzo changma
Dujek kandes song
dujek ngo porwa tandi re rawa khonchim laso khari jana yang dujek ngo pochre du she sede penna donchen mangu chen du ne trupe ngopo se da chirwa du shepa sede.
Now, in terms of the first of the four seals, it was, just a second, so I use the same phrase. How did I write that? In terms of the first of the four seals, Buddha Shakyamuni, when addressing the monks at Kushinagar, said, all things shaped by conditioning or conditioning forces are impermanent. And this will now be explained to some extent from the perspective of subtle impermanence. Now, the obvious and easily recognizable things in the outer world, its landmass, which has various shapes and forms, mountain ranges, flatland, and so on and so forth, as well as the buildings erected by humans and so on and so forth. All of these things are the outcome of the synchronous meeting of conditioning forces. Which brings us, as was said, to the subtle perspective of impermanence, where the consideration is that all those things are made up of innumerable subtle material particles, atoms and subatomic particles, the building blocks of matter, building blocks of the various building blocks of matter, atoms and subatomic particles, gather together in clusters, and then due to the interaction between them, large material objects come to be. They congregate, as it were, these clusters of subtle material particles, and we end up with mountain ranges and so on and so forth. Now, all of them are the outcome of the conditioning forces that these building blocks of matter make for. And therefore, all those things are impermanent, the building blocks themselves, as well as the larger collections of them.
Tendreke du pana dunchin dube du chamuchi de chashana yang tangbu ko pana jongwe kamlu sengke de trup tenen jongwe kamla tenne jongwe dunchin de yonggo yo.
If one looks at one of these subtle material particles in terms of its origin is that of the so-called elemental forces. There was a mention yesterday of the 5 elements: empty space, earth, water, air, and fire. Now, these elements and their causes, the elemental forces, are what make for the building blocks of matter. They, as it were, or it's rather the elemental forces associated with the 5 elements, these forces, in terms of their workings, are responsible for the appearing of subtle material particles that then collect together in terms of their workings, collect together so that we end up with large things size-wise made up of matter, mountain ranges, buildings, and the like.
Penna, Tanjungage Kamgnane, Tongani do Namke Kamge, Namke Kampi Orwa, Namke Kamti, Konje Pendupacher Kokuyor.
So if we begin with the first of the 5 so-called elements, that could also be called or named basic constituents, in this case with respect to the outer world, things made up of matter. The first of them is space. Now, we are speaking of a mere void, and one may end up with the impression that what is at hand is nothing at all, a sort of nihilistic view of this element. However, even though we're looking at a mere void, the mere void performs a function. Without that void, nothing could happen. There would be no space within which things could manifest. So when one speaks of the void, yes, one is looking at empty space as it were. However, it's not that empty space, this element, the void, is a dead thing, as it were. There is no life there. There is no performing of a function. There is. It performs the function of providing space for other things to appear in. So that's the capacity or the ability of the element called space, that of providing space for things to appear in. That's how the other or the remaining 4 elements can appear and function. They do appear and then function in empty space. Without empty space, they couldn't appear, nor could they function.
They member on the tongue, Tongba Tongchang, Shawa Meba Chil Son of Tangbina,
Now, if space didn't have this function, if space was, as it were, a dead thing, where nothing happens, not even a function of sorts, then the 4 remaining elements could never appear. And therefore, an outer world or a world system wouldn't come to be. There would be no world systems at all. No universes, no planets, no stars.
뉴발 때네 다 샤워 가르치기도 되당 되네 종에 돌텐서 주비용도 돌 참모 텐서
So you have the 5 elements and the forces, the elemental or basic forces which give rise to them and their interactions. 되네?
되네 종에 돌 텐서 주비용도
And because of or in dependence upon the interactions between them, subtle material particles come to be, atoms and subatomic particles.
다 텐서양 칸데스네 용게도 되당 찍라 찍되체네.
And in terms of each of these components, as it were, it's the case that all components, for them to appear and function, depend upon the other components of the entire composition. Hence, one speaks of them as dependent occurrences.
대 찍라 찍되 대 원년 종에 돌ten서 랑진지 주바이나 찍라 찍되 고해요 말어.
And this points to the fact that these subtle material particles do not truly exist, meaning they are dependent for their very own existence upon innumerable factors of the entire composition, as it were, as was just explained.
penna 찍라 찍되 맨나 되네 저 죽투에 잔 매로.
And without that relationship of dependency upon all the other factors, if that was not available, that kind of relationship, as it were, then again, subtle material particles would never come to be. Because just a single of the many factors involved cannot produce, as it were, those subtle particles.
대간난 신게 종화된서 종에 돌된서 깨직매랑신 맨나 찌라 찌되베 샤와대양 두탐면도가
Jigme minna sunger va. Jigme minna ser du. Du givontu de gjorgoger ve Jigma.
Ngå kun jurdigi yobat minna.
Koran gjorvachen minna.
Minna.
Tene.
Tene 찌라 찌되바 생게대 용탐매로.
On the other hand, Marina, det är inte ramsin riktigt anda. Koran gjorvachen minna, tene?
Minna. 찍라 찍되베 샤와 생게대 용금하러.
Ja. Dyltrenchik säger du getanda. So if we continue to look at one of the many factors in terms of what we're discussing, that of something appearing and then functioning. Now, if each of these factors, whether we look at a subatomic particle or anything else, in terms of the many factors available or at hand, if these factors were not impermanent, were not of a changing nature, were not in a process of constant change, then again, there couldn't be a relationship between these many factors. And therefore, again, nothing could happen simply. There would just be a mere void, a void that does not have a function, and therefore nothing can happen at all. There would be no world system, there would be no sentient beings living in it, and so on.
다 텐데 체네 섬스 당용도 깨지마 생긴 대양 꼭 나만가 심한가 디심아용
Kechi matanda kangdandra gogindu.
ngop khoran ge 깨지마데
Ngoipo korangi kechi ma ngoipo de kangi ngoipo sumbiore.
penna dul thamu jiina kon jurgin chen deyorwa.
So if one looks at the building blocks of matter to make it easy to understand, probably the majority of you know from science classes at school that in clusters of atoms and subatomic particles there is constant movement and therefore constant change. And their movements, their workings, them performing their functions, here in terms of a time frame, the change is so subtle that it cannot be perceived by the naked eye, for example. Every split second there is change happening in terms of these clusters of atoms and subatomic particles. Tene dela tene kansu so.
Junro chingmato ko dela pena minjurwe ngopochi lagmindua.
So there isn't a single thing, no matter how static or fixed it may seem to be, that isn't a process of constant change so intense as it were, that any given thing changes to a given extent every split second. Hence, whatever one looks at, whether it's something minute like a subtle material particle or something very large like a mountain range, there is no difference between the two in terms of their changing nature or changing status. Both are about constant change, every split second, as it were. Nothing is fixed or permanent, nothing is of a lasting nature.
Tene tanganzo chi 공바이네라 농바이네라 강가 나니데 대가랑레 단다 가장데 데랑레 성성 근센당데 드라와치를 때네.
So one may then wonder, what's the reason for regular mortals like ourselves to end up with the impression that the buildings we live in do not change the way that was just described. The country we live in also remain the same day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out. That's how we see the outer world. So what's the reason for this, someone may ask? Well, it's simply because the segments of that constant change resemble one another to the extent where we end up with the impression that there is a whole rather than a process of constant change. An example which would illustrate this false impression that we all have would be the slowly moving water of a river. The water of a river moves constantly. However, when the water moves very leisurely, then there is the impression that the river one is observing remains the same. Year after year after year, one may live in the vicinity of a river, let's say. And one sees this river as the same old river throughout all the years that one lives there in the neighborhood of it and sees it every day. And one speaks of the river as the same river, though in fact it's never the same river. There is new water flowing by day in and day out. Therefore, the river doesn't remain the same even for a split second, because its waters flow constantly. It's never the same water that one sees. Therefore, not the same river. Bibimsara.
Yeah. Zukjin
Naso.
Rajgirwa.
Naso.
Konge poron dendeshun rote.
Naso.
Kong songre. Pen le tongbobe genong soge. Poron da hajan zebu, hajan zikbo. Tedechi tongduga songre. Dachamba songe poron de zigde. Kashaba.
Lasso?
Metak pe tingwachi mato kanyang tongdu yamare songre. Tene Shanchub samban jambal ge tongdu.
Manyushi.
Menzushir ge tongdu de yume pongbochi tongdu songre. Mintur ki songre. The charange kat da yimpe song tse. Ten daga rang do tin yosare.
Now, there is a good example which illustrates this very well, given by Buddha Shakyamuni himself to his disciple, King Bibimsara, who was the king of the city-state of Rashkir at the time of Buddha Shakyamuni. Now, being of the Buddhist faith, the king would from time to time invite monks, arhats, and the Buddha himself, of course, as well as bodhisattvas and others, to his palace. And the Buddha told the king that when a monk of full monastic ordination or who has taken full monastic ordination, at the beginning of his monastic way of life, if he were to come here to your palace, he would be greatly impressed by the grandeur of your palace. Whereas an arhat like the Arhat Kashyapa would not at all react the same way. He would simply, with respect to your palace, see a process of constant change. He wouldn't form the idea of an impressive palace at all in his mind. And again, if the Bodhisattva Manjushri were to visit, his perception of your palace would be the same way he would see an optical illusion. He would see but an optical illusion. So, depending upon the mindset of the beholder, there are different reactions to the one and same object.
Chetsa, Yawakama Page, Metakpar Molin Chetua, Sonde. Tang as a Metakpa Yimbata Hogiot. Tang Molin Chetu, Metakpa Ranjin, the young Dolor Kamchu Nanda. Tene Loge Kampati Yagru Salu Rodu Tang as a Kumbazewu, China Yanko, Kale, Kalachena Metapa Chingwa Jimba Mato, Telesin Chache, Yulme, but Tending Tongiot.
Now, the Gyalva Karmapa in his message said, accept emptiness. What he meant is cultivate a good knowledge of impermanence. And if you do this, or if you persist in doing that, then the impermanent nature of everything will become more and more clear to you. And in the end, rather than seeing an impressive palace of grandeur, one simply sees constant change. And what's the point in all of this, someone may think? Well, if your worldview is one which sees the facts about the things that are seen, then which is that of impermanence, that of constant change, the effect of that new way of seeing things, namely in the light of what they truly are, the effect of that is the weakening of attachments, notions of a real reality and the like will be greatly weakened by this worldview, which accepts impermanence as a fact, as the nature of things. So,
go ahead. Did Tunkin Nanjur Patike, Ribat Ser Sone, Metabang old chick, say you rangi matubatic to be out.
So
Jambayang Dutch.
the practitioner who gets to this point where he, as it were, sees impermanence rather than a static, solid thing of sorts, or things of sorts. The effect of him seeing impermanence rather than a lasting nature is, or makes for rather, a shift in his mindset where his capacity for knowledge opens up, as it were, and he will see in the end the nature of impermanence. He will see the emptiness of impermanence, like Manjushri, who, rather than a real and solid, impressive palace of grandeur, simply saw an optical illusion.
Perna Jetsum Milarepa
Lasso?
Perna Yolmo Tahu Gizone
Kangisong?
Yolmo
Yes.
Te Tahu Singizong Seravata Nazar Dosate.
Sen Kango.
Tahu Singizong.
Sengizong.
Yeah, no matter that the machine center, you has a second one.
Sengyang is a
Singayomar Tahu the main.
Sengizong.
Yeah. Tene Bakta Pula.
Tai, you're not in a Sengizong, Ming Takuya Kanyo.
Kashi, the Milaraba Korata.
Lasso?
Ta Tene
Trapuk Sengizong.
Yeah. Milaraba
Lasso?
Puchin Jetta, Bebe Puchon in a single or Milaraba, they said of it. Tene
Gedangi, Chu.
Mar job yet, ye should have payout.
Chobje Khenpo Chobje
Yeah.
Chungshuni.
Yeah, Chempo do them in the Ganzak song.
Niginang la de Sengizong de Chikre.
Job Yegnan Chikre.
Okay.
Pushing job Yegnan. Tene, Chen come backed up on the person.
Lasso?
Ten backed up for Yabuke Porone, kilometer doing a chindu. That the Rechigla, you never what Rachigo. Bergen Nanjur was Chambo Milare passing in the pen to say the Yabu Porono, then the Shirova. They compare much. Come Yabu Poronte, then they call Metaguchimachere, Trafu de Metaguchimachere.
Dendemato Sigiamino.
Ziemindua. Oh, Tindra Chona, then neck Shamba sing the Boom to Groa.
There is another example from the life of the noble Milarepa, Tibet's great yogi, who, for the major part of his life as a Buddhist practitioner, lived in caves in secluded areas. There is the mention of 18 major caves and 2 minor ones. One of the 2 minor ones is situated in the Yolmo region of Nepal, and its name is the Lion Cave. Now, descending from this place, one gets to a Nepali town called Bhaktapur, and apparently Milarepa at one point had descended from the Lion Cave down to the outskirts of the city of Bhaktapur, which was a city-state at the time and had its proper ruler, its king. Now, Milarepa settled beneath a natural rocky structure approximately 7 kilometers from the city of Bhaktapur. Now, the king was informed that Tibet's great yogi, Milarepa, was dwelling close to the city, and he therefore dispatched a messenger with an invitation to the palace. Now, Milarepa declined the invitation, and we can understand from him doing so that to him there wasn't a difference between the place he stayed and the palace of the king. Both were simply nothing but processes of constant change. He presumably saw nothing but constant change with respect to his simple dwelling in comparison to the dwelling of the king. Milarepa didn't see a difference. The palace of the king was the same, constant change, nothing more, nothing less, which points to the fact that Milarepa was an individual who had gone beyond attachments, and here the specific attachment to one's dwelling place in terms of its grandeur, its comfort, and so on and so forth.
Tatinde chene ngazungune ne jinjik dente chawane rakpa la khandis tumdu rakpa khurang ngote taru matngne tama metakpe yowachikrang yimbar ko ti
Also?
La ngepa chikrang ngepa ting sukba chi kosona te yangdo lori chi kamchuk bayina te metakpa te ngansum to thongyong biyo bare pakpa namchi te zik to biyo bare ngansum to.
Now, in terms of the outer world and its impermanence, yesterday there were some brief explanations about how a world system comes to be, and the four phases explained briefly, where we can see from mere void and the function of mere void, things start to happen. So there you have a process from subtle to coarse, the end result being a world system. And then today we've considered the same, though we start with the end product, as it were, the outer world, and then looks at its composition in the light of subtle impermanence, and we end up with understanding that what's there is just impermanence and its movements. Impermanence and the changes, or the constant change it produces, as it were. Now, this is something one needs to contemplate. One needs to get used to seeing things in the light of what has been explained, to the point where one develops certainty with respect to that this is the case. And once there is that kind of definitive knowledge, which one continues to cultivate, then at one point the practitioner will have a direct knowledge of impermanence itself. He will see impermanence, as it were. And this is exactly what the so-called noble ones have achieved. They do have a direct perception of impermanence itself.
Penang Kazan Shushure, Takpa, Nerjin Jigdin, the Metakpa in Betsu, Chenabe, Ninjo Lajik Twitzer. Two Yavati Gilla, that Yama Java Jane, Hamok Shane, Metakpet Sula, Yane, young to some much corner, the rank.
Now, all of you who have listened to these explanations will now presumably have ended up with an idea about what impermanence is. You will have ended up with a measure of understanding impermanence. What you need to do next is to do your homework, as it were, which means persist in efforts where you contemplate what has been explained to you.
That is some young to Kornanda. That you are some Jimato. Maybe same get into touch Sunaya. Tatung. They come Majuna Nerjin the Shempe Hembade, Lamsan dogma.
So one persists in those efforts till one truly knows that there is but change. There is nothing but change in the end. However, one needs to cultivate the definitive knowledge of that till it becomes the way one sees things. It becomes one's world view. Kom machukna kare reason.
Kom machukna lamsang nerjinjiktingi shembate dogmate.
If that isn't done, it would prove rather difficult, if not impossible, to overcome one's attachments to things in the world. Overcoming attachment to things in the world depends upon whether one truly knows impermanence or not.
Tenyang di tsutte ta rejawa konchim ta chipu mayimpa. Jondu gigmo pot samegel pa jan samastanta.
And one should apply this to all things, not just mountain ranges, rivers and the like. Each and everything one should apply this process to, the process of acquainting oneself with impermanence till one sees it.
Penangarang gashu get songkonji no chen, dulog songkonji na. Tanga dulog gabu yun kenji na. Ta dulog ngo the condition tum de dang. Te tangbon yongwe kam. Tenen yongwe dul.
Yongwe kam.
Yongwe kam.
Tene dul.
Dul. Tene te mango je cho.
Lasso.
Tende ji de pla yib de kado te wan ji lo ba. Ta tende ke yib tong kado te yang. Rere na samna tang de keji ki sik lo gro wa. Yo we ran jin ji jang jang re de yo wa.
Tindu Tindeg you want Bashike, the jacket Jilanga Shinja Karsian Jagunda. Then Tichi Kamuna.
So, to give a practical advice here could be the following. Most people, one would think, perhaps not everyone, but in today's world, people are very concerned with appearance. And at least in the Western world, people are very fond of dressing up, of looking good when presenting themselves to the rest of the world, as it were. So let's think about how fond most people are of dressing up, literally, with respect to clothing. So think of a single person, for example, who is very fond of clothing and dressing up well. This person walks off to a department store with a good selection of various items of clothing. He might be looking for a jacket or a coat, whatever it may be. Now, let's say this is a Buddhist practitioner who would like to overcome his attachment for this sort of thing. Now, he is someone who has heard about impermanence, as was explained. So when getting to because just hearing about what was explained won't reverse his attachment to good clothing. Now, when he gets to the department store, rather than looking for the color of the item of clothing he's going to purchase, whether he likes the color, the design or so, he should instead give thought to that this piece of fabric in the shape and form of a jacket, let's say, what was its beginnings? Well, it was the elemental forces responsible for the 5 elements appearing in empty space, that in turn made for atoms and subatomical particles collecting in clusters, and the clusters collecting together, and so on and so forth. And the end result is the fabric produced, which is then designed in a certain way, and according to this year's fashion, perhaps. And when this person stands in front of this item in the department store, he thinks, that's exactly what I would like to wear. Now, instead, he has given thought to what was just said, and therefore, he, to some extent, would be able to view the jacket he would normally have bought and brought home. He may just view it in the light of change. The jacket is but change. The jacket is not its color, it's not its design. Those things are figments of the human, of the imagination of human beings. Color is but change. Design is but change. The item itself is change. There is nothing but impermanence in the shape and form of change. And viewing this item in this way, the person might just walk away without even wanting to buy it anymore, because he realizes the whole thing is sort of a meaningless thing to do. Why would he want to purchase change? Why would you want to pay for change? Why do you want to fork out your money and pay for change? It's absurd. It's rather absurd, if you give thought to things in the light of what was explained.
There are
all sorts of attachments that one has for various things. A lot of women in particular are very attached to purchasing good cosmetic creams in order to maintain the quality of the skin, sort of attempting to reverse signs of aging. Then there are others who are into jewelry. Some people are shoe fanatics, and some people are very into bags. Khenpo Rinpoche says he's one of the bag people. At any rate, try to view whatever you desire in the light of what was explained. And if you do this practice persistently, then your view of the things you desire may change the way that was described.
Tam metaphor ngolin nang chene, tindes chene, lord ji kamchu da, when shimba doya deyang, be misiba loda dawa gogmare, kale shimba do.
So it's a matter of acquainting oneself with this other way of looking at things. You look at things in the light of their impermanence rather than in the light of your desire for them. And if this is done persistently and earnestly, then it may not take that long to at least overcome the initial urge to buy something that one is fond of.
Penakazan Yaugam Besung Chignandua Namji Kupchati Yang Gam Jasa Yakshuji in cigarettes, Rilu Kupchati and Gam Chasa Yakshuji in cigarettes, Kaba Gamnaya Gamshina Kanga Yakure Sondua.
Now, in his latest message to the Buddhist community, His Holiness the Karmapa said, among other things, in terms of meditation practice, perhaps sitting on a chair in an aircraft is the best place for you to meditate, or perhaps the chair in a train would be the best place for you to meditate. What's the implication? Well, the implication is that you don't need to have a special place for meditation. If one knows how to meditate, that is, to cultivate knowledge of impermanence and the like. There are many different objects of meditation. However, if you know how to do the meditation, you can do it anywhere, while sitting in an aircraft or while sitting in a train. You don't need to have a special place for doing that. You can do that anywhere, at any time.
Lasso, that ring, she needn't take them with that bear, Sude, Halam, Trupsung, then that the net Yashabi. Then long you just send them with the sunny shubi.
So that ends today's lecture, during which the various perspectives of impermanence with respect to the outer world have been explained. Tomorrow we'll continue with impermanence in the context of the sentient beings who live in a world system. Lasso?
Yoshu Kingdom in Jambal Doje, Shunkentege. Konangone Zoxing at Nanja of Champure. Kong and the Tagaskami Shoji Kong Sons. Kong Los Angeles shopping mall on and drone, they do like chip machon song to. That can then under sedu sandwich in Kur. Shopping, that can shopping mall go shower, that they pep, the Yamaninga, you shall do at the Ningon to the sandwich in the sack or corando tone, that they pay up your reason. Sambata Ninja Gambit ne Talando Sungto. Jumat everything is in Gambit Nayang, Talando Sungto. Not of Gamshina, Tindichere.
Now, Khenpo Rinpoche just would like to add the following. He forgot to mention this earlier. He knew a great Nyingma master of our time, the late Ngulshu Khen Rinpoche Jampal Dorje, who was a true Dzogchen master, a true Mahaati master. Now, one of the times that Khenpo Rinpoche met with him, Ngulshu Khen Rinpoche told him, well, once when I was in the US, in the city of LA, I had such a nice time there. I didn't live far from a large shopping mall, and in the morning I would take 2 sandwiches with me and go over there as they opened. And it's one of the nicest places I've ever been. It was so pleasant to spend day after day at that shopping mall. What he would do was to bring with him the 2 sandwiches, which would be his lunch, and he would buy something to drink in the mall, Coca-Cola or whatever. And then it was Coca-Cola. He informed Khenpo Rinpoche that the Coca-Cola was so good tasting. Really nice drink, he said. Anyway, he would sit there on a chair in the shopping mall, this large shopping mall, all day long. And he said, it's the very best place for meditation. It's a very good place to cultivate loving kindness and compassion for others, and it's a very good place for meditating on the illusion-like nature of all things.
Shopping mall on the young denkin so trutang the samna chitang then Shambata Hinjero Micheka never read or so.
He had told Khenpo Rinpoche that when watching the people who came there, in the light of just how deluded they were in terms of their worldview, you couldn't stop loving kindness and compassion for them arising within. You were just overwhelmed by loving kindness and compassion for them when seeing just how confused and deluded they were. However, he said, before one goes and sits there and chooses this as a place of meditation, one needs to have trained quite a bit on the path already. Then one can make progress in terms of meditation practice in places like that.